Welcome to your very first Spanish lesson. If you are starting from absolute zero, perfect. You do not need to know anything yet. Today, we are going to do something incredibly useful right away. Introduce yourself in Spanish, names, where you're from, where you live, and a few tiny personal details. Simple, practical, and something you can actually use today. And here's the good news. Spanish is very pattern-friendly. It likes neat little endings. Once you hear a few examples, your brain starts to go, "Oh, I see what's happening here." That is exactly what we want. Let's begin with one of the most common ways to say your name. Me llamo Ana. That means my name is Ana, or literally, I call myself Ana. Me llamo Ana. You do not need to worry too much about the grammar yet. Just hear it as one useful chunk. Me llamo, me llamo, me llamo. How do you say, "My name is Ana," in Spanish? Me llamo Ana. Me llamo Ana. Good. Now, if your name is not Ana, and I have a strong suspicion it may not be, just swap in your own name. Me llamo David. Me llamo Sara. Me llamo Luis. There is also another way you may hear. Soy Ana. I'm Ana. That is also correct. But for now, me llamo plus your name is super friendly and easy. Now let's talk about where you are from. In Spanish, a very useful phrase is soy de. Soy de Canada. I'm from Canada. Soy de Mexico. I'm from Mexico. Soy de India. I'm from India. How do you say I am from Mexico in Spanish? Soy de México. Soy de México. Nice. Notice something simple here. Spanish word order is often very similar to English. I am from Mexico. Soy de México. Very direct, very manageable. That little word de means from or of in many situations. So de is a tiny but powerful word. Now let's add where you live. Vivo en Madrid. I live in Madrid. Vivo en Londres. I live in London. Vivo en Nueva York. I live in New York. How do you say I live in Madrid in Spanish? Vivo en Madrid. Vivo en Madrid. Great. And en means in. So vivo en Madrid is literally live in Madrid. Now here's a helpful beginner secret. In Spanish, the verb often tells you who is doing the action, so subject pronouns like yo, meaning I, are often omitted. In English, we must say I live. In Spanish, you can simply say vivo. You can say yo vivo, and sometimes people do for emphasis, but most of the time just vivo sounds natural. That means instead of yo soy de México, you will often just hear soy de México. Instead of yo hablo español, just hablo español. The verb ending is doing part of the job, and that brings us to a tiny bit of verb awareness. Very light, very friendly. Spanish has many verbs that end in R, ER, or IR. Think of these as three big verb families, like three apartment buildings where the verbs live. For example, hablar means to speak. It ends in R. Comer means to eat. It ends in Vivir means to live. It ends in IR. When you talk about yourself, these often become hablo, I speak. Como, I eat. Vivo, I live. See that little O ending? For many common verbs, when you mean I, you'll often hear O. Hablo, como, vivo. That's a great early pattern to notice. So if you ever feel lost, look for that O. It often whispers, "Hey, this is about me." Let's use hablar. Hablo español means I speak Spanish. Hablo un poco de español means I speak a little Spanish. How do you say I speak a little Spanish in Spanish? Hablo un poco de español. Hablo un poco de español. Excellent. Un poco means a little. Very useful. If you are a beginner, this phrase is your best friend. It is honest, practical, and charming. You do not need to speak perfectly. You can just say, hablo un poco de español. and smile. Smiling is not grammar, but it helps. Let's try another verb family. Estudiar means to study. That is an AR verb. Estudio means I study. How do you say I study English in Spanish? Estudio inglés. Estudio inglés. Perfect. Estudio inglés. Maybe that is true for you right now. Maybe in 10 minutes you'll want to say, Estudio español también. I study Spanish too. Now, one more useful personal detail. Work. Trabajar means to work. Trabajo means I work. Nice and regular. How do you say I work in a hotel in Spanish? Trabajo en un hotel. Trabajo en un hotel. Beautiful. Trabajo en un hotel. That N again means in or at, depending on the context. Let's gather a few simple building blocks. Me llamo Laura. My name is Laura. Soy de Colombia. I'm from Colombia. Vivo en Bogotá. I live in Bogotá. Hablo inglés. I speak English. Estudio español. I study Spanish. Trabajo en un banco. I work in a bank. That is already a real introduction. Now, a small and very helpful note about pronunciation. In Spanish, the letter H is usually silent, so hotel sounds like o-tel, not ho-tel. Trabajo en un hotel. Also, Spanish vowels are usually clear and consistent. A, E, I, O, U. That makes reading easier than many beginners expect. Let's do a few more quick moments together. How do you say I am from Spain in Spanish? Soy de España. Soy de España. How do you say I live in Barcelona in Spanish? Vivo en Barcelona. Vivo en Barcelona. How do you say I speak English in Spanish? Hablo inglés. Hablo inglés. How do you say I study Spanish in Spanish? Estudio español. Estudio español. Very nice. You are already doing the thing, not just learning about the thing. Now let's talk about common mistakes beginners make, because avoiding a mistake early saves you lots of cleanup later. First, do not translate word by word too literally from English if the Spanish phrase has its own usual form. For your name, beginners sometimes want to say, Mi nombre es Ana, all the time. That does mean my name is Ana, and it is correct. But mi llamo Ana is more common in everyday introductions, so start with mi llamo. Second, remember soy for where you are from, and vivo for where you live. Soy de Mexico, but vivo en Madrid. From uses de. Living somewhere uses en. If you mix them up, people may still understand, but this distinction is worth learning early. Third, try not to add the pronoun yo every time. Yo vivo en Madrid is not wrong, but native Spanish often sounds lighter. Vivo en Madrid. At this level, just get comfortable hearing and using sentences without the subject pronoun. Fourth, watch the verb endings. If the dictionary form ends in R, ER, or IR, the everyday I form is often easy to spot and remember. Hablar becomes hablo. Comer becomes como. Vivir becomes vivo. Estudiar becomes estudio. Trabajar becomes trabajo. Not every verb in Spanish is perfectly regular, but this pattern is a fantastic start. Here's a memory trick. Picture 3 doors. Door 1, ar. Hablar becomes hablo. Trabajar becomes trabajo. Door 2, er. Comer becomes como. Door 3, ir. Vivir becomes vivo. No matter which door the verb starts in, the I form often walks out wearing an O hat. Silly? Yes. Memorable? Also yes. And memorable wins. Now let's hear a short story in Spanish. Just listen first. Me llamo Marta. Soy de Argentina. Vivo en Sevilla. Hablo un poco de español y un poco de inglés. Estudio música. Trabajo en un café. Now let's go line by line. Me llamo Marta. My name is Marta. Soy de Argentina. I am from Argentina. Vivo en Sevilla. I live in Seville. Hablo un poco de español y un poco de inglés. I speak a little Spanish and a little English. Estudio música. I study music. Trabajo en un café. I work in a cafe. Nice. That little Y means and. Very common, very useful. Also, cafe has a written accent mark. You do not need to fear accent marks. They are helpful little signs that guide pronunciation. Let's build your own mini introduction. Repeat in your mind and customize it. Me llamo and say your name. Soy de and say your country. Vivo en and say your city. Hablo, maybe inglés, maybe un poco de español. Estudio, if you study. Trabajo en, if you work. Let's do a couple more together. How do you say my name is Carlos in Spanish? Me llamo Carlos. Me llamo Carlos. How do you say I am from Argentina in Spanish? Soy de Argentina. Soy de Argentina. How do you say I work in a cafe in Spanish? Trabajo en un café. Trabajo en un café. Excellent. You are not memorizing random words. You are building a real toolkit. So what did we learn today? We learned how to say your name with me llamo. We learned how to say where you are from with soy de. We learned how to say where you live with vivo en. We used a few basic personal detail verbs like hablo, estudio, and trabajo. And we noticed a very important early pattern. Many I forms end in O. We also touched on something wonderfully Spanish. Subject pronouns are often omitted. So instead of saying yo hablo español every time, natural Spanish often just says hablo español. That is a big win for a first lesson. A really big win. If you can now say something like me llamo Ana, soy de México, vivo en Madrid, hablo un poco de español, then you are already speaking Spanish. Beginner Spanish, yes, but real Spanish. And that counts. Keep it simple, repeat out loud, and do not wait to feel ready. Ready comes after practice, not before. You are doing great, and this is only lesson 1. Imagine where lesson 100 will take you. For now, say your introduction one more time, slowly and confidently. Me llamo, soy de, vivo en, hablo, estudio, trabajo. Perfecto. Yes, perfecto means perfect. You're already collecting Spanish.